Today on the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement Podcast, a week of initiation and metamorphosis awaits us. First, we'll talk about the astrology of the week, which is a big deal. Full moon and Pisces eclipse this week, as well as the portal to the fall equinox that is now open. And we're going to look at why and how our ancestors celebrated these incredible times of cosmic portals. We're also going to be looking at how to break generational cycles through the Christ consciousness and what that has to do with the 144,000 chosen ones from the Bible that is spoken about that will transcend this great apocalypse and be saved by God. And then we're going to look at this week's Ancestral Tarot reading, which brings it all together for us this week because it is talking to us about entering into an era where there's emotional, spiritual, physical, and material success. So get ready to align with the universe, to heal your lineage, and to step into your highest self. Satnam, beautiful Sovereign Sisters, and welcome to this week's Sovereign Sisterhood Movement Podcast. We have a lot to discuss, especially because this is a very climatic ending of cycles, brand new beginnings week, where if you have been feeling even more anxious or like the other shoe's gonna drop or like something big is happening, today's astrological segment will hopefully bring you all of the awareness and information you need to learn how to navigate this very alchemical life-changing time. So let's start with the astrology for the week. So this week is a very powerful like crossroads. That's really what it feels like, especially as it relates to the astrological calendar. We're literally all standing at this turning point with this full moon in Pisces eclipse that is happening on the 17th of September, regardless of when you are listening to this. A couple of weeks before and even a couple of weeks afterwards, you'll still feel these emotions and heightened sensitivity with the nervous system with eclipses. So you'll probably have already been feeling that. In addition, we have the fall equinox, which is happening on Saturday, September 21st, which our ancestors knew to be a time that was incredibly sacred. They celebrated with ritual, with ceremony, because it really marked this important transition where they could align with highest potentials, where they could align with healing energies, where they could align with God and spiritual downloads, especially when it has to do with Pisces, because Pisces is the shaman, the spiritual master of the astrological signs. So let's start first with the full moon eclipse so you can kind of understand what's happening and how to prepare for it and why you might be feeling the way you're feeling. And then we'll talk about the equinox. But to go back to what I was saying, this full moon in Pisces is very pivotal. And there's a few reasons why it feels so different and why it's also very important as it relates to the ending of a cycle and the beginning of a brand new one. First and foremost, Pisces, very spiritual, shamanic, of the world beyond the veil, but also very much emotional. And when it comes to Pisces, as it relates to eclipses, we're talking about emotional and spiritual releases. Being that Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, it's closing out cycles, right? It also represents the collective unconsciousness and our connection to God. And also the dissolution of boundaries between the physical and the spiritual, between ourselves and God and the universe. And what this full moon in Pisces is shining a light on are any hidden patterns, emotional wounds, especially those passed down through your generations. And the reason that it's doing this is not to punish you, it's to help you let go of the old emotional baggage. Remember, the only way that we can heal is if we feel. As human beings, we don't like to feel. Pisces, because it's such an emotional, empathetic sign, is also known to numb themselves. They're very psychedelic. They like to explore into that world of expanding their consciousness, but sometimes they use it for escapism, maybe alcohol, drugs, right? Why? Because of all of the emotions that they feel all the time, empathetic, intuition, and when you're moving into this eclipse, it feels like that. It feels like a flood of emotions. Like you might be having a great day, and all of a sudden you're like, why am I feeling like this? Because Pluto is also in the mix, being in the last degree of Capricorn before it leaves Aquarius. Pluto is of the subconscious mind. It's of the darkest, deepest thoughts that we have. And with the combination of Pisces, it's going deep into those feelings of guilt, those feelings of shame, that resentment, all that emotional pain that hasn't been resolved, that you've been carrying unconsciously, so that you can purge and release, so that you can acknowledge it and break the cycle. And the cool thing about this Pisces full moon eclipse is that it's in the Virgo Pisces axis for the first time. Every eclipse is always under two specific signs and the axes of the eclipses. So there's a north node and there's a south node. And within each eclipse, we have the flavor of two signs that tell the story as to what these eclipses are going to be about. This is going to mark the first time that we enter into the Virgo Pisces axis since like 2015. So what was going on in your life in 2015? Also, this means that because it's the new eclipse under the Virgo Pisces axis, that this is the beginning of a story, but one that ended in the October 2023 lunar eclipse cycle. So you can also go back to October 2023. What was closing? What was being eclipsed out of your life? What were the seeds that were being planted? Because this this Pisces full moon eclipse is going to show you how much you got out of your way. If you didn't do the inner work of changing your mindset to get out of your own way, because it's only you that's in your way, then this full moon eclipse is going to feel very, very overwhelming. It's going to feel like you're hitting old patterns. You're going back to your old ways. But you can also start to think about what happened in 2015. And 2015 was when I went to the Peruvian jungle to work with shamans and to work with plant medicine, Mother Ayahuasca. So it's not a coincidence that I am a Pisces moon. My moon sign is Pisces. So I am the one that lives in the closet spiritually, but deep down is a shaman, is an intuitive high priestess, right? In 2015, when this eclipse series was happening, I was in the Amazon jungle. Now, this time around, I'm getting ready to head to Costa Rica to close out a cycle that began back then, that put me on my life path, what I'm here to do. It gives me chills thinking about it. What I'm here to do with my life, which I'm already doing and helping women generationally heal. But there's a component that occurred in the plant medicine ceremony with Mother Ayahuasca in 2015 that now is coming to fruition here. So think about 2023. Think October specifically. What was ending? What was starting? And then go back to 2015. What were the themes? And remember, around Pisces, there's a lot of themes around spirituality. And when you think about Pisces Virgo, it's balancing the spiritual and the physical. Because Virgo is really grounded. Virgo's an earth sign. Virgo wants us to heal, especially the physical body, to take care of yourself. Self-care. Pisces water sign pulls us towards the spiritual awakening, a deeper connection to the universe. So together, they're helping you, this eclipse portal, bring your spiritual values into your everyday life. My spiritual awakening actually began in 2008. It culminated in 2015 with my experience with Mother Ayahuasca, which then led me to Kundalini Yoga. And now here in 2024, heading to Costa Rica this week as well, with a lot of spiritual guidance and synchronicities that I could not explain to you. Only God can. This tells a perfect story of how much I've gotten out of my way. Now, you might say my life feels the same, or it feels worse. Then you haven't gotten out of your own way. You're still on the same mental patterns, which is why this full moon eclipse is also a rites of passage, an initiation, which I'll explain at the end once you understand what the fall equinox symbolism is all about and what it has to do with this. So just think of those two dates and go back to that. Now, let's talk about the fall equinox happening on Sunday. As we approach the fall equinox, which is happening this Sunday, September 21st, we're entering the period of balance of harvest. Remember, The equinox, the fall equinox, is a time when a day and night are of equal length. And for us yogis that meditate, these equinoxes, the solstices, and for our ancestors, they were very important. Why? Because you and I are like plants. We need water and light to survive, right? And the amount of light that is projected onto Mother Earth impacts us. That's why eclipses impact us so much, because they cover the light of the moon, or they cover the light of the sun, right? That's why it makes our nervous system so crazy. Same thing with the fall equinox. With the fall equinox, we have a perfect balance of light and dark. That changes the amount of light that's coming onto Mother Earth, which changes your consciousness. That's why our ancestors practiced meditation. They did ritual during these days, because they would harness. That's how you harness. Think about meditation as like grabbing a bag, and you're meditating and you're putting this energy into the bag to be used for your spiritual growth, your healing, your evolution. That's what harnessing means. So our ancestors, they viewed the equinox as a time to honor the harvest, both literal and metaphorically, to give thanks to what has grown over the year, and to really prepare for the winter, right? The months ahead of going within. For our ancestors, the fall equinox was not just like a seasonal change, it was a spiritual one. That's why they built temples. Chichen Itza, the Mayans, and outside of the areas of Cancun, the Egyptians, the temples in Egypt. I mean, there are temples throughout the world that represent how they harnessed energy and how they use these temples for meditation on those specific days, right? So on the equinox, we can use the energy to come into balance in acceptance of the light and the darkness. We all have darkness and light within us. In fact, if you don't have darkness in you, you wouldn't have incarnated into this world, into this body. But in the next segment, we're going to talk about Christ consciousness, and how through the acceptance of the light and the darkness, you can accept the Christ consciousness in you, which brings you into perfect balance, and which brings you into the spiritual awakening that our brother Jesus Christ, he came here to teach us all to do. He did not come here to teach us about the crucifixion. He came to teach us about the resurrection, which is what this fall equinox portal with the eclipse in Pisces really feels like. So what is it that you're here to bring into balance? And how do you come into balance? Is by letting go, by purging, by pausing, by reflecting. And that's why it really does feel like a huge rites of passage this week. Rites of passages for our ancestors were key as they navigated life's transition. These ceremonies were a way to honor the change, whether it was coming of age, marriage, or moving from one season to another. Just like the bar mitzvahs or a quinceañera in Mexico, that's the tradition that we follow. When when a young girl turns 15, they throw a massive party that's like a wedding, and just costs as much as a wedding. And basically, that's the coming of age of a young woman, and they mark a significant point in your life. That's what this week is. You're leaving an old era behind. You're closing out a cycle and you're stepping into a new one. You're being initiated. But if you have not gotten out of your way, you're going to miss the initiation. You're going to miss the invitation. Because during this full moon in Pisces and the fall equinox, we're all being invited to create our own rites of passage, marking this time of transformation. So this could be a simple ceremony of you letting go of old emotional patterns, or acknowledging the lessons you've learned over the past year from October 2023 to now, but especially from 2015 to now, because there was a theme there. There was something that you were working with, especially as it relates to spirituality and grounding that spirituality. For me, it was 2015 and leaving my 15-year job as a real estate broker, career, business, when I had my spiritual awakening. This gives me chills under this eclipse portal back then. And now I grounded that energy, Virgo, by creating the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement, the story of vitality and spirituality, where I teach women how to generationally heal. My spiritual self grounded into the physical self and birthed it. That's what you're doing too. And that's what the equinox wants you to create, a line. Old self gone, new self here. Authentic self, not new. That's what the rites of passages were for. And we're hosting a rites of passage ceremony inside of my community, the Sovereign Sisterhood academy for generational healing. And one of the things that I'm going to take them through in this ceremony on the fall equinox is the three parts of the rites of passage, which are grief, gratitude, and grace. So if you are going to entertain perhaps a ritual or ceremony, it's important for you to reflect on these three things, because grief is very important in rites of passages and in you allowing an old cycle to die like you need to this week. Grief is about acknowledging the pain and the sadness that it feels like to literally allow an old self to die. Even if that old self wasn't working out for you anymore, it still requires us to grieve and to let go of that old identity. This is a very necessary emotional release. So if you find yourself crying during this week, see that as a blessing, nothing but a blessing. Then from grief, you got to go into gratitude, giving thanks for the growth and the lessons that you've experienced in the past. When we focus from grief into gratitude, then we align ourselves with abundance and with massive amounts of healing. And lastly, grace. Grace meaning embracing the gifts and the kingdom of God because you have allowed transformation and outdated patterns to die so that you can fully embody your authentic self. So grace happens naturally. So when you get to the point of grace in the rites of passage, it's really just about allowing yourself to receive and to enter into a new life where, you know what, God is always there because God has always been there. But sometimes because of our generational trauma patterns, we get mad at God, we don't know where God is, or we believe God is not there. So there's three parts to this rites of passage that if you're doing something this week, you have to acknowledge and really think about what it is that you specifically can journal around these three areas that I just mentioned. Because this Pisces energy is going to be very deeply connected to your spiritual and emotional realms along with the fall equinox. While you do this awareness and this journaling and this meditation work, it's going to help you release and purge what no longer serves you. It just needs acknowledgement. So this is a perfect time for you to break free from ancestral patterns that have held you back, to receive quantum healing, and to really help you integrate what you've learned in the last year and since the last time this eclipse portal was here, which is in 2015. Our ancestors celebrated the equinox with rituals. They honored both the light and the dark, and we can do that too. This is a really powerful time to release guilt, shame, all those emotional burdens that may have been carried down through your lineage, but that end with you. Because by doing so, we're rewriting the story of our lineage and we're stepping into a higher level of consciousness. So as we reflect on this very powerful astrological wisdom for this week, with the full moon in Pisces and the balance of the fall equinox, it's clear that this energy is calling us all to release what no longer serves us. And even if you don't do it, it's going to be eclipsed out of your life. So you don't want to learn the hard way, right? God's not doing that to punish you. You're doing that to yourself. Because God's will for us is to live. God's will for us is to love. So what about those deeper layers of emotional baggage that gets passed down through the lineage? You might ask, how am I going to get rid of that? I can barely deal with my stuff. Now you're telling me there's going to be stuff from my ancestor? Well, guess what? This brings us to the heart of today's episode, generational healing, in which I want to explore today Christ consciousness, forgiveness, and releasing ancestral guilt and how it can free you. And actually, the only path to free you from these inherited generational patterns of trauma. So let's get into it. So, you all know that I've been a student of Course in Miracles, spiritual psychotherapy, which is basically a channeled course by our brother Jesus Christ. And I've been a student since 2008, and I've been teaching it for 5 years now, since 2018. And let me just tell you that the Course of Miracles literally has the answers to anything you could ever ask. Like, I'm talking about personal, business, generational. I mean, anything you ever ask, our brother Jesus Christ laid it out in this course. And the reason why I was so drawn to this course, well, at the beginning, I actually rejected it. And I was like, there's no way that I could ever live out what the course is asking me to do or what our brother Jesus Christ is asking me to do. Like, this is so hard. But as I tried to run away from it, it would come back into my life even more, and it would come back into my life even more. And this began in 2008. My spiritual awakening began in 2008. And back then, I understood that there was a Christ consciousness that was being born in all of us. I just could not put it into words. And that's when the course came into my life. And I grew up Catholic, so I was already raised around the teachings of Jesus Christ, but I wasn't very much into like going to church or even reading the Bible a lot. I did read it and I studied it because there was a point in my spiritual awakening where I went and explored like all the different spiritual traditions, like Hinduism, Buddhism, Kabbalah. Like I was reading everything, right? And I got deeper into the Bible and things of that nature, but I never really resonated with the dogmatic ways that church leaders taught. And when A Course in Miracles came into my life, knowing that these were Jesus Christ's teachings, it resonated 1,000%. Like I knew this is exactly what Jesus Christ is trying to say in the Bible, but people are not interpreting it right. So I was hooked, even though I tried to get rid of it between 2008 and 2009 and 10. It came back into my life over and over again. And I've been a student ever since and teaching it, like I said, for 5 years almost. And that's where I really started to understand the Christ consciousness. And honestly, it's what led me to disrupt generational patterns of trauma that most families are not able to disrupt. So let's talk about first what the Christ consciousness is, why it's a fundamental foundation to disrupt generational patterns, and what it has to do with generational trauma. So, what is the Christ consciousness? So, according to Course in Miracles, and generally speaking, when you think about Christ consciousness, you hear this term a lot right now. And what it is our true nature. It's our universal divine essence. It's basically the recognition that we're all one with God, that separation is an illusion, and that guilt and fear are tools of the ego, which is your programming designed to keep us in small or disconnected states of definitely away from our true power. And that's the whole thing that there's a lot of religious abuse because religion will say that only Jesus Christ was the Son of God, that you're not, that you're a sinner. And that's exactly what's wrong. I don't know if you knew, but when Jesus Christ was born, the teachings of Gnosticism was actually growing, which means God is in you, not in a building, not in a guru, not in a priest. And you are created in the image of God. But the Gnostic teachings, the people that were here to teach that, which was Jesus Christ himself, too, that's why he was persecuted. But all those other people that also were here to teach that, because they was here to grow during that time, they were persecuted. They were kicked out of the cities. And then they pushed forward the agenda of the ecclesiastical teachings, which are basically that in order for you to access God, you have to talk to a priest, that you're a sinner, the complete opposite of what Jesus Christ came to teach us. So what's happening now is that the awakening of the Gnostic teachings is happening. The Christ consciousness, you could never shut it down. It was inevitable. Our brother Jesus Christ came to teach us the Christ consciousness. He was a revolutionist. He was a radical teacher. And that's why they persecuted him. But now the ecclesiastical teachings are slowly dying off because we're seeing how unpure they are. And the true teachings of Gnosticism, which is that Christ consciousness lives in all of us, even the murderer, is what's really awakening, because we all are created in the image and expressions of God, not just the brother Jesus Christ. So Christ consciousness is not about one person or a savior, but it's the divine essence within each and every one of us. Jesus is not going to come from the heavens and save our asses from this mess we've made down here. The only way this mess we've made down here will be saved is the Christ has to be born in you. You have to do the work that Christ came to teach you to do, which is transcend guilt, self-judgment, and forgiveness. And when you think about patterns of generational trauma, like things like sexual abuse. Do you know that in sexual abuse, like most perpetrators are actually within the family lineage. It's not like a stranger that does this, it's like a family member, most of them. So do you understand why these generational patterns just of trauma keep getting passed on over and over and over again? Because everyone's pissed off, everyone has resentment, and then these things get tucked under the rug. Even if the person dies, if you do not heal and accept the Christ consciousness, which our brother Jesus Christ left us a perfect course to do that, then your daughters and their daughters and their daughters are going to repeat the pattern, because this is a perfect university where you're here to awaken the Christ consciousness within you. So the Christ consciousness is basically a state of consciousness where we walk the talk like our brother Jesus Christ. We have healed the mind. We don't think we can do it because none of us have trained or healed the mind. The way you train and heal the mind is through A Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy and through Kundalini yoga meditation. That's the reason why you can't forgive. Because remember, generational trauma patterns create incredible damage to the brain and to the nervous system, which cause secretion of hormones that make you very ill and sick. So if you're feeling ill and sick, you're not going to want to forgive. You're going to be triggered by the word forgiveness, and you're going to carry a lot of unprocessed emotions within you that you don't want to talk about or that you don't even want to bring to the light. Now, from a Kundalini yoga perspective, the Christ consciousness is the awakening of the highest spiritual frequency within the body. As we clear the chakras, that's what Kundalini yoga is for. To awaken the dormant energy. Why? Because of generational trauma. With generational trauma, your chakra centers stop working. Energy, which is your emotions, gets stuck. Now it's not processing. Now one of your liver or one of your other organs is not working. Why? Because the emotions became stuck. But the Christ consciousness, as it relates to Kundalini yoga, and I can prove it to you right now, give me a second, is basically you being able to bring this energy from the root chakra through the crown. And you do that through meditation, through breath work in Kundalini yoga meditation, and through Kundalini yoga mantra, because it is a science of energy. So when you have generational patterns of trauma, childhood, depression, addiction, all those things that come with it, your energy only lives here at the root. It never travels up. That's why you can't even breathe. You're not consciously breathing, right? So because of that, you cannot accept the Christ consciousness. You were born here to learn these practices of Kundalini yoga, to awaken the dormant energy so that it could come to the crown and awaken you to the Christ consciousness within you. Now, this is not just new age jambalaya. I can actually prove this to you. And this comes with a lot of numbers. I actually saw this from a creator on TikTok. Her name is Yaya's World. Yaya's underscore world 777. 3 sevens. I call my sister Yaya, so I thought it was really cute that her name was also Yaya. But she was showing this basically like picture. And in the picture it had all these different calculations that she found online. And this is what the Christ consciousness represents. And this is equated to, in the Bible, you keep hearing that the 144,000 chosen ones, that there's 144,000 people that are going to be chosen by God to survive this great apocalypse that we're all going through. And when I heard that first, I was like, why would God pick only 144,000 people? Like, that's messed up. Like, God would do that. Like, God would say, oh, this person accepted the Christ consciousness in them, so they're allowed to move to the next level, but this one didn't. So they're not going in. If you believe that, that is right away, you need healing with the relationship you have with God and the way you see God, because God would never choose that way. And I want to break it down to you what it means, the 144,000 chosen one, that has to do with the Christ consciousness. So first and foremost, the book of Revelation is all about the 7 chakras, believe it or not. And that's why I laugh so much when really religious Christians or Catholics are so afraid of meditation and the chakras and all that. Is when in the Bible, that's all they talk about, like chakras, astrology, intergalactic family members, and yet, again, it's religion. It's not our brother Jesus Christ. It's religion, the patriarchy who created religion to control you that will make you feel afraid of owning your power. So let's break it down. The book of Revelation is all about the 7 chakras. And it mentions the number 7 like 55 times actually. 7 churches, 7 letters, 7 spirits, 7 lamps, 7 stars, 7 seals, 7 horns, 7 eyes, 7 angels, 7 trumpets, 7 heads, 7 crowns, 7 plagues, 7 bowls. I mean, 7, right? 55 times. Now, the number 144,000 in the book of Revelation is also in regards to the 7 chakras. So you hear that God is going to pick 144,000 souls and allow them to transcend, right? Well, when taken literally, this represents the exact number of souls that will ascend to God, right? That's just the literal form. But that's not what it means. In order for you to understand the Bible, this is why our brother Jesus Christ spoke in parables, because the English language really messes things up for us, where it takes away the true essence and meaning of things. So by him speaking in parables, you would have had to learn to read with your heart, not with your linear mind. And that's why most people are like, oh, I want to be one of the one. I'm a chosen one. I go to church. I'm one of the 144,000. That's not what that means. You see, in Kundalini Yoga, they teach us about the 7 chakras, right? This is a fundamental teaching we just talked about as light energy, right? These are the little brains that process information, that process emotion, and all of those different things. Now, they can also, like I said, get blocked very easily by negative emotions, right? Thoughts during the course of your development as a child, as a baby, as an adult, right? So we need preventive practices to cleanse and purify them. But there's also a lot of symbolism as it relates to each of the chakras and the numbers. And this is where it gets really interesting. Because, for example, the symbol for the root chakra here is it has 4 petals. The navel chakra has 6. The solar plexus, the next one, has 10. Right? The heart chakra has 12 petals. And the throat chakra has 16, which actually equals 48, just right there, right? So you're now at 48. Now, we're moving to the third eye chakra, which is represented by the number 96. Third eye, throat, third eye. So third eye right here, represented by the number 96. Why? Because the third eye is 2 times as powerful as the 5 lower chakras. So this adds up to 48. 2 times 48 equals 96. Now stay with me, because this is where it's going to get really interesting. Crown chakra is said to be 1,000 times more powerful, right at the top, right? 1,000 times more powerful than the lower of the 6 chakras. That's also why every time you blink, you have 1,000 thoughts. And based on your consciousness and how trained your mind is, you're either picking the high frequency side of the thought or the low frequency side of the thought. That's the paradox, the polarity, the dark and the light. Based on your consciousness, you're picking one or the other. Can you believe that? 1,000 thoughts. This is why you need mind training. Because if you have 1,000 thoughts, you are just your thoughts, right? How are you in the gap of this thought and the next thought? You can't without a stable nervous system or an agile brain, which is why we meditate. So the crown chakra, they call it 1,000 petal lotus too. And it's 1,000 times more powerful than the lower 6 chakras. So when you add up the lower 6 chakras, you get 4 plus 6 plus 10 plus 12 plus 16 plus 96. That equals 144. Then you times 144 times 1,000, which is the crown chakra. Now you get 144,000. So what 144,000 chosen one means is that when you relieve yourself from karmic debt, judgment, self-judgment, judgment of others, you heal your mind. You do the work of forgiveness. You do the work of acceptance and acknowledgement. You clear guilt. You clear the shame that you have then, you will then emit the highest frequency of light, and you no longer will have to return to this realm of form, the physical body. That's what the Christ consciousness is. That's why our brother Jesus Christ is not going to come back in a physical body and save all of us. He doesn't have to, because he activated all of the chakras. In fact, between the ages of 11 and 33, remember, there's no why doesn't the Bible talk about him during that time? Because between the ages of 11 and 33, Jesus Christ went out into the world to learn to meditate and to teach others how to meditate. And why he did that is because he was showing them that the 144,000 is a frequency. That's the God frequency. That's the Christ consciousness frequency. And the way that happens and the way you get to that frequency is by activating the chakras. And how do you activate the chakras? You have to do the work of forgiveness. You have to do the work of releasing guilt and shame. But as a yogic therapist, as a yoga therapist, what that means is meditation, mantra, breath work. All of it is part of Kundalini yoga. That's the science of energy. So you incorporate and integrate the practices of Kundalini yoga, meditation, plus you combine A Course in Miracles spiritual psychotherapy, which is what I did to create my generational healing program, because that's how I was able to disrupt all of these patterns. Then not only do you accept the Christ consciousness, but you finally end the cycle, because in the Christ consciousness that you've accepted within you, you have accepted forgiveness, you have accepted the release of guilt, the release of resentment and grievances. And so most people think that they can't do that. Like they just have to live all their life angry for what happened to them as a child or what happened in their lineage. That cannot be farther from the truth. We have an energetic, spiritual, and physical, biophysical approach to healing you. The Christ consciousness is not some new age lofty term. It's why you were born, to allow that to be born in you. And in fact, I see the Christ consciousness being born in a lot of people right now. There are a lot of people, because now people are like realizing, yeah, their childhood, there's generational trauma. So I'm going to seek out healing. And we're having much more holistic approaches to healing, not as what I would love it to see, of course, because mainstream media and pharmaceutical companies are not going to allow it. But you got to agree with me that a lot more people are seeking out healing modalities like sound healing, like yoga, like meditation. And that also is very reflective of the Pisces Virgo eclipse axis we're entering for the next 2 years, because Pisces healing emotional, but Virgo physical body. So it's like spiritual healing. We're all seeking spiritual healing now, more and more people. Why? Because the Christ consciousness is naturally awakening in a lot of us. We're all more inclined to, how do I forgive? How do I end this cycle? How do I stop this trauma? And a lot of us, I think about the war and the things that are happening in the world that are very atrocious and horrible. How many people are standing up against those things? Many more people than even 100, 200, 300 years ago. Why? Because the Christ consciousness is awakening all of us. The change of the energy that's coming into Mother Earth is changing our consciousness, is changing our nervous system, is changing us. We were always stuck at the root. Now we have people having spontaneous Kundalini awakenings, even if they've never practiced meditation before, and that energy is rising. They're not always pleasant, the Kundalini awakenings. Some of them are, I'm seeing Christ everywhere, or I believe I'm Christ, but some of them are very, very scary, where it literally feels like a psychic, a psychic, not a psychic, a psychosis, psychedelic, no, basically an episode of psychosis. That's what I was trying to say. So what we really need to understand is that we're evolving as human beings, and that 144,000 chosen one number is a frequency. It's the God frequency that happens when you do the inner work to accept the Christ consciousness. That's why I put both of my healing modalities together to be able to come up with the generational healing. You cannot end the cycle. Again, even if the person dies, if you have not done the work of forgiveness, your lineage will repeat that cycle, because you were born in order to respond differently. That's how we break the cycle. So all of this relates to generational healing in so many different ways. When we awaken to our divine nature, we recognize that the pain that's passed down through our lineage is not personal. It's part of the collective illusion, meaning it's part of projection of pain. That person did not hurt me because I am unlovable or unworthy. It's because they have so much pain. That's a shift in perception. That's a miracle. And then through the work of forgiveness, we're not just forgiving others and ourselves, we're forgiving all the lineage. That's how we disrupt these cycles. The key teachings from A Course in Miracles is that forgiveness leads us to release the root cause of all suffering, which is guilt. And even if you have never hurt anyone and they've hurt you, you still feel guilty because at the core, you are the Christ consciousness. And when we are not in the Christ consciousness, when we are not forgiving, we feel guilty. Isn't that crazy? So there's a couple of things. First, in A Course in Miracles, our brother Jesus Christ left for us the perfect path to accept the Christ consciousness within us. Through Kundalini Yoga, we practice the meditations, the mantra chanting, the breath work within Kundalini Yoga that then allows that energy to rise to the crown so that we can accept the Christ consciousness as well. So we must take a holistic approach that addresses both spiritual, energetic, physical components. So it's really all three. That's what holistic healing is all about. Now, if you want to join us to learn more about this, I'm going to be sharing more about this in our weekly Wednesday live healing session and my private Facebook group community, the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement. The link is below in the comments. Join us there. I'm going to be sharing more of the symbolism, but more importantly, we're going to be meditating. We're going to be practicing a meditation specifically for childhood trauma that I've been sharing this entire month that you can actually experience with me on that day after our generational healing session. So join us there on Wednesday at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And of course, if you can't join us live, the replay will be there for you. And this is a complimentary Facebook group for all of women interested in generational healing, and it's free because right now my academy, my group coaching program, and my membership community, Satori, is not open for enrollment. But you could still join us there. Every day I share information on generational healing there. And then, like I said, every Wednesday I go live with a live healing session where we actually practice meditation and I go deeper into these subject matters. So now that we've touched on how to break the chains of generational trauma through Christ consciousness, it's a lot, but it's totally doable. Let's now see how this energy is playing out in your life and in your lineage with this week's Ancestral Tarot reading. And this week, oh my goodness, it's offering us such a symbolic map for navigating this week's alchemical transformative energies of the Pisces full moon and the fall equinox. So let's move into this final segment of our tarot reading for the week. So the first card that came up in the immediate past, because I like to pull 3 cards for the week, look at the immediate past, the present, and the future. And the first card that came out was the Nine of Cups in the immediate past. Now, this is all about self-realization, about, I am so sorry, the immediate past was not the Nine of Cups. That's why I was confused. The immediate past is the Judgment card. Much better, actually, believe it or not. The Judgment card, I think when we see it right away, we think, I'm afraid of being judged or I'm being judgmental. I'm judging others. But what this card is all about, especially in the immediate past, is us experiencing a period of awakening and self-evaluation. Judgment is actually you realizing that there is nothing to judge. So it's almost like you're reflecting on a time where you were bringing balance into and back into harmony. So there was this inner calling for evaluation, for forgiveness. You were maybe on a path where there was a lot of inner work around that. There was closure. This card is represented by also the energies of how we have infinite possibilities in looking at things, how we can reflect on the lessons of the past, and more importantly, look at these experiences as portals for awakening, for self-evaluation. Because really what this card is all about, it's reflection. And I'm really thinking about the Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, Pluto retrograde in Capricorn energy right now, because I really feel that this reflects that energy. In the past months, you've been called to reflect on ancestral patterns, maybe those related to authority, power, and tradition, where you were looking at these karmic debts that were coming up for release. And maybe you've been going through this process of reckoning and forgiveness. That's what the Judgment card is all about. And with Pluto being in the mix this week, I really feel that it's a transition where you're now looking at these ancestral beliefs and power structures, and you're asking, do they really serve me? Is this something that I want to continue to play out in my life? It's almost like you face these call to actions to reflect on past decisions and to look at them from a place of neutrality without judgment. You came from a really judgmental mind, but now through this inner work that you've been doing, you were given the opportunity to look at these burdens, look at this pain in a way that it actually helped you grow and become the person that you are today. So this is about releasing judgment and guilt from ancestral patterns. This is from coming from a period of forgiveness, of renewal, of reflecting on lessons from the past. And again, with Pluto being in Capricorn for the last couple of months, and none of us will ever experience this in our lifetime anymore, it really does feel like triggers that may have come up just to show you how far you've actually grown. So in the immediate past, what we're really, really working with is what is it that we've learned? And how can I fully let go of the control and power obsession that led me to my demise, or that led me to really challenging, conflicting situations? In either case, you've come into neutrality, you've understood the lessons, and all because you did do the work of forgiveness. So be very, very proud of yourself. I'm telling you, my audience is cycle breakers. So please acknowledge how much you've come along. In fact, if you're even listening to this, you're a cycle breaker. So that means that you already are and in alignment with these energies. And what does that mean? That means that you have been doing inner work to change and to forgive. And because of that, the present card shows us the state of emotional satisfaction, the Nine of Cups. This is the card of wish fulfillment. This is the card of contentment, of gratitude, of personal happiness, of material success, of abundance. And guess what? It symbolizes nine. What's the nine? That's a completion. That's in the end of a cycle. And that's our present moment energy. And it's represented by you finally learning to enjoy emotional contentment and material satisfaction. It's because of this. So you went through this judgment, you realize that God is not judging you, that it was just you, and now God is giving you your kingdom. Bigger things that you can never imagine. You're learning now to live in gratitude. Amazing what happens when we heal ourselves. You're feeling connected to your heart's desires. You're reaping the rewards of a spiritual and emotional healing. The Nine of Cups are upright is all about us understanding that our desires are coming to fruition. This is the wish fulfillment card. There's a deep sense of satisfaction where you are finally emotionally, spiritually, and even materially. So all the purging you do this week with the crying and the emotions that come up, measure how far you've grown, because it's not what comes up, it's how are you going to respond. You have manifested emotional abundance, and you've been working towards a lot of liberation. Why? Because you're ready energetically, spiritually. You were being prepared for this. This is the rites of passage week for you. And now you're basking in the rewards of your spiritual growth, where you're aligned with your heart's desires, where you're also supported to expand because of all of the hard work that you did. To me, this is really the energy of the full moon in Pisces. Because think about it, the Nine of Cups is emotional fulfillment. Pisces rules also the subconscious, the ancestral waters. And with this card, it's almost like there's emotional satisfaction. There's deep connection to our ability to release the past and judgment from the past. So this card is asking you, what emotional or spiritual desires have you been manifesting, and how can you ensure their continued fulfillment by releasing these old patterns during this eclipse? So beautiful. And then in the immediate future, King of Cups, upright, more emotional balance, wisdom, control, compassion, diplomacy. 5. This is represented by the number 5, the king. Well, it's actually 14, but then you break it down and it's 5. That's the number of transformation and change. And what is all about is us leading with emotional wisdom, entering into an era where we know how to manage our emotions with maturity and stability, where we're even offering support and guidance to others while not taking on their pain, where we're using our intuition to guide our actions, our decisions, where we're healing through emotional mastery. This is your future because of this. So looking ahead, the King of Cups speaks to this role you're taking on of emotional mastery, of leadership. You're going to need to draw on the emotional intelligence you develop, right? With the Nine of Cups and the Judgment card. You're going to need to remember to use that. But overall, you're being encouraged to balance your emotions and intuition to offer support and guidance to those that come in. You're ready to step up into a teacher position. This card is absolutely suggesting that you are stepping into a role where your emotional maturity is going to be a source of strength for others. And as you face emotional challenges, you're going to do so with calmness and insight, neutrality, becoming a leader and navigating all these emotional and spiritual complexities. Congratulations. So overall, the reading this week reveals a journey of profound transformation, emotional fulfillment, and mastery. In the recent past, the judgment brought a powerful awakening where you were confronted and you released ancestral guilt, emotional baggage. You were able to see things through neutrality with no judgment. You healed your mind. So there's a renewed sense of yourself. And this karmic reckoning has paved the way for your current emotional satisfaction and abundance with the Nine of Cups. Now you're in a phase where your hard work, both personally and ancestrally, has manifested as emotional contentment, as joy and gratitude. And now, guess what? As you move into the King of Cups, it's showing you that you're being called to lead with emotional wisdom. You're ready. No more training, no more anything. You could keep going to school if you want to because you enjoy it, but you don't need that right now. Your ancestors are guiding you to take the emotional intelligence you develop and to use it not only to navigate new emotional challenges with maturity and empathy, but to lead others. The culmination of this reading is suggesting that your work in healing ancestral patterns has not only brought you fulfillment, but also positioned you as a wise and compassionate leader who now can support others in their emotional and spiritual journeys. So many of you, especially as we move into the full moon Pisces eclipse portal and we stay in these Pisces Virgo portals, eclipses for 2.5 years, many of you are going to be called to step into the role of a healer. Many of you are going to be called to help others as it relates to holistically healing body, mind, and spirit. And this full moon eclipse can be your breakthrough moment, that revelation that you needed, that confirmation. In fact, this podcast episode could be the confirmation that it's time for you to stop waiting and it's time for you to start doing, giving, and receiving. So, so powerful. I can't even explain to you how much this resonates personally and also in my community at the Sovereign Sisterhood Academy at Satori Vitality and Spirituality. The women in our communities are just in a buzz. There's so much buzziness going around. There's manifestations, there's dreams, there's desires that are manifesting in such big ways. And this is the power of community, ladies. And that's why it's so important to not do this generational healing alone, to have sisters around you to help you discern. Now, because our communities are closed again, you can join us in our free Facebook group community where we share a lot more about this information every single week. So join us there at facebook.com/groups/Sovereign Sisterhood Movement. And I will put the link below as well. Now, I just want to thank you for joining me on this very epic week. I'm getting ready to head out to Costa Rica. I will be out there sharing more of the magic from that beautiful location, closing out a major cycle in my life too. But overall, I just want to thank you also for showing up, for being part of our movement of generational healing. If this episode resonated with you, please take a moment to not only subscribe to the podcast, but to like it, to share it, to follow us, and to also leave a comment or question. I get back to my comments and questions very quickly so that I can assist you with your own personal generational healing journey. And for all of us, let's continue to spread this movement of generational healing far and wide. May the entire world experience the power of generational healing. Until next episode, I'll see you soon.